Hey everyone, Nubkeks here, and in today's video we're taking a look at the third to last boss of the Sanctum of Domination. This is raid testing on the public test realm, and our first look at Fatescribe Roh-Kalo. What I've decided to do for today's video is to change the format of these videos to just one boss per video, so let me know if that's good or bad. I figured it would just keep the length of the videos down, because I'm really liking this raid, to be honest. I'm getting really hyped for these bosses. I like to talk about them. We'll see how it goes. If you missed, of course, the other videos, check them out as well. We've already seen a few of the different bosses here on the heroic testing. Right, let's talk about the Fatescribe then. What is going on with this boss? Well, this boss, I would say, is sort of the gimmick boss of the Sanctum of Domination. And where that gimmick comes in is in P2. Let's cover P1 first though, and then we'll get to what is this crazy big dial thing on the floor and what are you going to be doing with that? So phase 1 of the boss has some fairly standard boss mechanics. We've got the big circle around players that's going to explode, go and drop it outside of the raid mechanic that we see in a lot of different fights. One of the interesting things about this one is that it does leave behind, that circle sort of stays behind and will explode again whenever the next set comes out. So you're going to be slowly running out of space in the room, and certainly when the difficulties go up, and these phases are going on longer because, you know, you're not as well geared, it's a mythic boss or whatever, this could get pretty intense, I think. The next big mechanic he has is, it's the cool 2.0 if you rated in Eternal Palace. It's called Fated Conjunction. Basically, there are these, I guess, banks of laser beams around the wall, and those will shoot out. So it essentially covers half of the room, because they're sort of angled through the middle. It's kind of like if you have a pizza cut into 4 different slices, and it would shoot from the north slice and cover the south slice as well, but the east and west slice would be free, if you sort of get my drift. Or then likewise it would fire from the west and cover the west and the east, but north and south would be free. That's sort of the vibe that's happening there. Quite an interesting one, for sure. It's definitely what I like about it compared to Zakul, which had the same sort of thing but with tentacles. Compared to Zakul, it's not a guaranteed one-shot on heroic difficulty. It seemed okay. I'm sure on mythic it will be a one-shot. So you have a little bit of leeway there. If you get hit by 2 in a row, it will one-shot you, basically. But it's a lot more visible. It's much more visible. You can actually see where these lasers are coming from, where they're going to go. So it's much easier to play around. Of course, the thing about Zakul was on heroic, there was 1 tentacle. It wasn't really that bad. It was on mythic when there were 3 tentacles that made it massively, massively harder. So we'll have to see what this does. This could be a mechanic that really ramps up in difficulty as we go further into the fight. The next mechanic he has is the Burden of Destiny. So this will affect one of the tanks. They run out, and then it's going to drop an ad, which is going to fixate the tank. So that will just run towards the tank. You can stun it, slow it, CC it, whatever you want to do, and just burn it down and kill it before it reaches the tank. If it reaches the tank, it explodes for raid damage and disappears. So we actually tried soaking it, and we were actually able to. It wasn't that bad. It puts a pretty nasty dot on the raid, but you could just heal through it pretty easily. We kind of figured though, like, what's the point? The ad wasn't hard enough to kill, so there wasn't really any reason to try to cheese it like that. But yeah, in terms of P1, that's pretty much it. Certainly on this heroic testing, it wasn't very hard. That would be one criticism, I think, for sure of the fight, that this part of the fight was not hard. I definitely think that this would get a lot harder though if you amp up the difficulty in mythic. If you had multiple banks of the lasers firing in order, so you have to really move around the room and you're very stressed by moving, but then there's these exploding circles which are constantly building up and taking up more and more space in the room, so you have to place them again very carefully while also dodging the lasers, while the tank also is trying to get out and you're also trying to kill the tank ad. Yeah, it could be interesting for sure. Right now though, it is not too bad. Phase 2 though is where this fight gets interesting. Yes, this fight gets very interesting. So the boss will teleport or run to the middle of the room and will just push everyone back out towards the edge. You can immune it with things like Death's Advance for Death Knights. They can actually not get pushed back. So you can cheese it a little bit like that. It's not too important though. And during this phase, basically, there's going to be a whole bunch of little lads spawning from all around the room. Again, these can be completely CC'd. They will be doing casts, which you can interrupt, you can stun them, whatever. So for a lot of the raid, it's going to be just, hey, group up these ads, AoE them down, nuke them down. At the same time, there's all these little orbs going around the room. If you get hit by the orb, it hits you very hard, and it also stuns you for 3 seconds. So dodging these orbs, AoEing the ads, keeping them controlled. The exciting thing, though, the exciting thing are these Wheels of Fate. Let's say these Wheels of Fate. How it actually works is that you've got all these rings, and these rings are going to have, some of them will be active, some of them will not be, I think, depending on your raid size. For us, out of the 6 rings, there was usually 3 of them were active at a time. There were 3 active. What happens is that you have essentially a slot will activate. This will be a glowing blue slot, and one of the runes on the wheel, one of them will be a glowing blue rune. You have to bring that glowing blue rune around to the slot by rotating the wheel. How do you rotate the wheel? You have to stand on the glowing blue rune. Then the direction that it spins is based off of how many people are in there, right? So I think with odd number of people, it goes clockwise. With even number, it goes counterclockwise. I can't remember which one is which, honestly, but that is basically the gist of it. So what you have to do is go, okay, we've got 3, maybe 4. On Mythic, I would guess there's very, very likely to be all 6 of these wheels. They all need to be turned. We have to get all of these glowing runes around to the slots. How are we going to do that? What's the shortest distance? Do we turn this clockwise or anti-clockwise? Okay, let's say I'm in the group on wheel number 5. I need to be working with my teammates there, and we have to figure out, do we need odd or even number of people? Which direction do we turn it? Then we need to make sure that we're on that rune and turning it and spinning it around. And again, on heroic difficulty, this wasn't too bad. This was fairly doable. I mean, the biggest problem that we ran into was because I joined in with a guild group, like half of a guild group, but then there were also a bunch of pugs in there as well. So it was just coordinating, right? This is sort of a pug killer boss in a sense. You know, you have to get the right number of people on each wheel. If there's some random person that doesn't really understand what's happening and they go and stand on a rune by accident, or they don't notice they're standing on a rune. I did that once as well. I was stood on a rune without realizing I was, and that ended up turning the wheel in the wrong direction. And this is the thing. If the wheel starts going in the wrong direction, well, you have to turn it then all the way back, or you have to commit to going the wrong direction, which could take ages. And you've got a time limit, of course, to get these runes into place. If you don't, you just instantly wipe. The boss then has a phase 3 as well. What happens in phase 3? It's just phase 1 amped up a bit, where you have to turn the rings whilst also burning the boss down. So again, I assume that at this point you have to watch out for things like, hey, you know that the Fated Conjunction, you know those big lasers that shoot across the platform? Yeah, well, you've got to be turning rings while that stuff is going on. So that gets pretty rough, that gets pretty nasty. The question of what specs are going to be good here is it's very interesting as well. I'm playing Shadow Priest, so I said, hey, you know what? I'm not on ring duty. I'm not supposed to be turning any of these rings. So I'm fully invested in the pad DPS, guys. Fully invested in the pad. We are speccing into AoE, which of course you need to talent spec into AoE as Shadow Priest to have any AoE. Let's fully invest in AoE and let's just pad the crap out of those ads. And that worked really well. Like, there's tons of ads, loads of them spawn in during this intermission phase, so you can spec AoE and just blast them. What I wonder, so for example, I'm looking at it and wondering, like, maybe you have, for example, melee DPS will just be focused on AoE killing the ads while the ranged spread around the platform, so they can still do something while the ranged basically turn all the dials. That could be what you do. Other potential idea would be that you would have, the melee group with the tank that would go and spin one group when you'd have 1 or 2 ranged group. Let's say there's 3 dials active on heroic. You could have 2 different range teams, and then you have the melee team. The melee team go and spin one, so they can keep, beating on all of the ads while they're spinning the dial. And then the range team spin the other one. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure what the best strategy is going to be, and it really does depend on how hard it actually is, or if you do need people to just completely sacrifice actually participating in the fight and doing damage for the sake of spinning the dials. I don't really know. Brings me back to what I said at the start of the video, where I feel like this is the gimmick fight of Sanctum of Domination. This is the gimmick fight. It's made or it falls on how good its gimmick actually is, and I'm not sure how good the gimmick is right now. It's a cool idea, will it actually make for some fun gameplay? You know, for example, if you guys raided in Nyalotha, gimmick in Nyalotha, Zanesh, the football boss, you go, oh, that's a pretty creative, pretty cool mechanic. Absolute pain in the arse to progress that boss. So we shall see. The other interesting thing about it is that it is the third last boss in the instance, which means that it should be relatively challenging. In theory, it should be pretty challenging. So yeah, I don't know. On Heroic, it really wasn't that hard compared to the other bosses we tested, like Kel'Thuzad, for example, who's the second last boss, the boss right after this one in the dungeon journal. Way harder than this one. Way harder right now. But again, this is Heroic testing. They can change things. Mythic testing, who knows? So yeah, it makes me a bit nervous. I kind of like when these gimmick bosses are, you know, boss 4 or 5 in the instance. So it's like, okay, there's a bit of challenge to the mechanic, to the gimmick, but it's, you know, the boss isn't so hard that if it ends up being bad, if it ends up being a bad or boring, you're not going to be stuck progressing it too long. The third last boss, though, it's not second last, it's not last boss. But yeah, I will be honest, I'm a little bit concerned. I'm hopeful, but concerned about this boss. So we'll see. Definitely the biggest problem on Heroic is that if you're not a wheel group person, effectively it's a pretty simple, you know, tank and spank boss, honestly. Like, you know, the P1 mechanics aren't too crazy, and P2 you're just sort of stood there AoEing a bunch of ads, right? You're not really doing anything if you're not spinning the wheel. Nothing that interesting. So yeah. Anyway, guys, that was my first look here at Fatescribe Roh-Kalo. Let me know what you think. Like I said, it's one of the most unique bosses of the entire raid. So yeah, I'm very curious to hear if you like the look of this boss. If you have any theories, have you theory crafted the best way to spin the different wheels? Are you terrified of what a nightmare this might be? I'm curious to know. I'm curious to know your thoughts. And thank you everyone for watching. Embracing the pad of Shadow DPS AoE in the raid. Yes. I'll see you all next time. I'm going to have another raid boss video preview out for the next 2 days. We've got 2 more heroic bosses to take a first look at. So they'll be out over the next 2 days for you to check out. So come back for those. I'll see you then. Have a good one. Bye-bye.